Final arguments in the Simpson trial. The prosecution confronts the Furman issue head-on.
Is he a racist? Yes. Is he the worst LAPD has to offer? Yes.
And the picture that led Judge Ito to pull the plug on live television coverage.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Good evening. The jury has seen and heard the evidence. Now, attorneys for the people are piecing it all together, trying to convince the jury that O.J. Simpson is guilty of 2 murders beyond any reasonable doubt. Deputy District Attorney Marcia Clark began closing arguments in the case today, but with millions of Americans tuned in, it was a judge angry at the cable television Court TV who stole the show for at least a while. Bill Whitaker in Los Angeles begins our coverage. Bill?
Dan, after threatening to cut off the TV cameras so often, it was a real shock today when Judge Ito actually did it, if only for a short while. But before he pulled the plug, prosecutor Marcia Clark kicked off her closing arguments by apologizing profusely to the jury, a jury which began the jury selection process exactly 1 long year ago today.
And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have been through so much. You have made a tremendous sacrifice.
She reminded them not to be swayed by emotion, then waded directly into the emotional minefield named Mark Furman, the ex-LAPD detective exposed by the defense as a racist.
In fact, do we wish there were no such person on the planet? Yes. But the fact that Mark Furman is a racist and lied about it on the witness stand does not mean that we haven't proven the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and it would be a tragedy if, with such overwhelming evidence, ladies and gentlemen, as we have presented to you, you found the defendant not guilty, in spite of all that, because of the racist attitudes of one police officer.
A defense detour, she said, away from the truth.
There were roads created by the defense to lead you away from the core truth and the issue that we're searching for the answer to, which is who murdered Ron and Nicole.
Then Clark began to weave her story, pulling together her threads of evidence, laying out her timeline for murder. The wail of Nicole's dog, she said, set the murders at about 10:15.
Which means that if that dog is barking like that and she's not tending to it, she's already dead.
Then Clark turned to Brian Cato Kalin, a witness sympathetic to Simpson, she said, who nonetheless gave damning testimony. It sounded like an earthquake to Kalin, but Clark said it actually was the sound of a panicked Simpson trying to hide the bloody glove and knife.
And in his haste, he ran right into that air conditioner that was hanging over that south pathway. And running into that air conditioner caused him to fall against the wall, making the wall of Cato's room shake.
She reminded the jury that limo driver Alan Park tried to rouse Simpson for about a half hour. Then, just after Cato heard those thumps, Park saw a 6-foot, 200-pound African-American enter Simpson's house.
I saw a figure come into the entranceway of the house, just about where the driveway starts.
It was the defendant. Who else could walk in the door, immediately turn on the lights, and then answer the intercom? Simple common sense tells you that the thumping, the glove, and the defendant's appearance on the driveway almost immediately thereafter are all one set of events, all connected in time and space. You don't need science to tell you that. You just need reason and logic.
It all proved emotional for the families of the victims. Then, in this case full of surprises, perhaps the biggest yet, when the camera zoomed in as Clark detailed the cuts found on Simpson's hand, Judge Ito pulled the plug on TV coverage.
And I'm inclined to terminate the coverage at this time.
With the camera off, Marcia Clark described Simpson's conduct after the murders, saying it showed a consciousness of guilt. She said he lied to limo driver Park about oversleeping, left blood around his house, sat bolt awake on the red eye while everyone else slept. She said he made up a story about a broken glass in Chicago to explain cuts to his left hand. And perhaps most damning, when called by police and told of the murders, Clark said Simpson didn't ask how, he didn't ask who, he didn't ask where. None of the questions an innocent man would ask. In court right now, prosecutor Marcia Clark is attacking the defense contamination theory, saying that the defense wants the jury to believe that only the killer's blood was contaminated. She says, I want Johnny Cochran to stand before the jury and say that the blood was contaminated, only that of the killer. Outside in the hallway, Johnny Cochran told reporters there are a lot of lies being told in that courtroom. Dan?
Bill Whitaker at the courthouse. For context and perspective on the Simpson case, we're joined now by two CBS News legal consultants. Former Indiana prosecutor Gregory Garrison is in Los Angeles tonight, and defense attorney Ted Wells is with me here in New York. First, Greg Garrison, the strengths of Marcia Clark's argument thus far.
Well, Dan, I think there's a couple of things that really stand out, and the thing that I think I like the most goes back to this morning early. This woman came out to them as a person. She began quietly, almost with a humble attitude, and she began to pick up speed gently. But when she got done with her sort of apologetic beginning for all that they'd been through and got to the business at hand, the business of describing the evidence, she picked up speed, got to a good steady pace so she wasn't leaving anybody behind, but not getting stuck in the mud either, and really kind of took all these puzzle pieces and put them together into a picture that is very compelling, taking all these different fragments that a circumstantial case provides. Phone records, photographs, blood stains, gloves, and all these things, and putting them onto a picture page so that all at once, maybe for the first time, the jury goes, oh, there's where those things fit. And even up until the moment while we're talking, we've been watching the monitors as we've been waiting today. She continues to do that, and she's gathering steam and gathering speed. Of course, we've got a good defense coming before this is over with, but right now, she's finally been able to build this, and the strength is that the pieces fit together. And that's the thing you could never know until you finally heard it all at one time.
Ted Wells, the weaknesses.
The concessions concerning Mark Fuhrman have the potential to come back and really bite Marcia Clark. Marcia Clark indicated today that Mark Fuhrman was a racist, was a perjurer, shouldn't even be on the planet Earth, but at the same time, it was Marcia Clark who brought Mark Fuhrman into that courtroom. She was the one who embraced Mark Fuhrman as a key prosecution witness, and ultimately Johnny Cochran is going to say, hey, Johnny Cochran, I showed you that he was a racist, and only after I caught him did Marcia Clark make the concession.
Ted Wells, Greg Garrison, thanks.